What's going on, everybody? I'm Ari Temkin, and it's just after noon Central Time, right here on Phantom, the New World Order of Sports Media. So thank you all for being a part of today's show, and thank you all for being a part of every day's show, if that is, in fact, the case. Big thank you to all of our partners at Phantom, helping us share this stream on the various platforms as we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. We are the New World Order of Sports Media at Phantom, delivering live sports content to you. My dad gives me the laughing emoji. I don't know why. I don't even know my dad knew how to use emojis, but there it is on the Phantom page. G. Garcia, Chris Bennett, Eric Kashani, Henry Munoz, all in the house. What's going on, everybody? A big shout-out to the Dallas Cowboys America's team page, the folks that are watching on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page, Alyssa Moreno, Eric Conejo, Joe Tranchina, my brother, and Patrick Prescott, all in the house. Patrick Prescott wants an Earl Thomas update, which I will get to here in a moment. Also, shout out to the Dallas Cowboys Report. Dallas Cowboys Report, another great page with great Dallas Cowboys content that I'm also broadcasting live on. And Judith Fuchs says hello, and so does Joey Perez. He says hello as well. Shout out to both of you watching along the Dallas Cowboys Report page. G. Garcia says, any scouting report on the new Cowboys wide receiver Carrington? Yeah, he seems very much in the same mold as Cedric Wilson, their draft pick out of Boise State, who is on IR to start the year, or is on IR for the year. Shifty speedster, a guy that had some off the field issues, which is the reason he probably wasn't drafted, but a lot of potential with him. He's not going to make the team, but he's a guy that's going to be on the practice squad and a guy that they're going to develop. So definitely a good guy to watch for in the future, because Carrington out of Utah has a lot of talent, which is the reason they signed him. On the Law Nation page, Richard Elizondo from McAllen, Texas is in the house. Wants to know what I think about players kneeling during the anthem. Says it's a slap in the face of veterans. I think it means a lot of different things. Symbolism. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So where I get the message that NFL players are trying to send, I think the problem is that their message can be muted by the way that other people feel about the anthem. It might not be their intention to offend people or to offend veterans or the armed forces or armed services and on and on and on, but that's what they are doing, unfortunately. And so that's why it's become such a hot button issue. Vincent Bobo gives me the thumbs up in the Law Nation page. I was hoping to avoid the anthem talk because it's just become so beleaguered, but I'll answer any questions you have for me, so feel free to ask those questions. By the way, quick shout out to SeatGeek, one of our major sponsors here at Phantom. And look, here's the deal. Go to SeatGeek, download the SeatGeek app if you haven't yet, and sign up using promo code Phantom. Your first order, you're going to get $20 off. Take a look here. The Cowboys open the preseason at home Saturday night. I'm going to be there with 105 Through the Fan. I'm part of the pregame show on 105 Through the Fan, so I'll be there. So come say hello. But I mean, you want to go see the Cowboys for the first time at AT&T Stadium? You can go to SeatGeek. Look at the picture. There are tickets right now available for $5 to go see the Bengals and Cowboys. You are not going to get cheaper seats to get in the door, see the Cowboys at all this regular season. Obviously, it's preseason, so I understand maybe there's muted happiness with the preseason, but get you a good look at what we've been talking about all throughout the preseason. So $5 you can get downstairs for $20, $30. And again, when you use promo code Phantom at SeatGeek, you're going to get $20 off your first offer. And even look at this. I mean, the Lions game, September 30th, $22 seats you can find right now. Giants Cowboys at $41. So on September 16th. So the reality is these ticket prices are not going to be as cheap as they are right now. So get out in front of it. Get $20 off your first order when you use promo code Phantom right now at SeatGeek. Download the app. Go to the website. Check it out right now. SeatGeek, which, again, aggregates all of the ticket sites all over the place. You can get overloaded with all these different offers across all the different platforms. Go to the one place that has it all, SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the app today. Start using it. Sign up and use promo code Phantom. We're going to get $20 off your first order. And thank you again to SeatGeek for being one of our sponsors here on Phantom, where you can get some really cheap Cowboys tickets right now, especially for the game Saturday. And if you come by Saturday, come say hello to me. So I'll be broadcasting live with 105 Through the Fan as part of the pregame show festivities along with Jesse Holly. I'm really excited for that. All right. Carrington is 6'3", had 90 grabs for 980 yards and 6 touchdowns from Utah. I didn't realize he was that big, Eric. Eric Koscielny on the Phantom page sending that out. I didn't realize he had that size. That's incredible. By the way, hit the share button if you wouldn't mind. Also, feel free to ask whatever questions you'd like to have asked. Jerry Del Angel says, "What's up, Ari? How are you, Jerry?" Patrick Prescott says, "From what you've seen, are Dak and these wide receivers going to be enough to give Zeke some help?" I don't know. I mean, yes and no. I think they are going to be more creative offensively. I sort of vacillate. I mean, I wonder who's going to step up and be that go-to guy down the field. They have a lot of answers, and yet I don't know that we've seen enough in camp or in the preseason to give us adequate answers. And quite frankly, if they threw the ball 100 times and 100 times down the field and completed it, I still don't know that we'd have our answers. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I have a decent amount of confidence that they're going to be okay, and they've certainly made a concerted effort, one, to push the ball down the field and practice that, and two, to be more creative. So I'm very interested to see, how this plays out from a play calling standpoint over the next couple of preseason games, because we're going to see more in weeks 2 and 3 in the preseason than we're going to see in week 1 or 4 in the preseason. So it's of course it's nothing like the regular season, but we'll certainly get our best looks at this team and what they're capable of in preseason games 2 and 3 coming up here. Beat Keith Batras says, afternoon governor. Stacy Hollingsworth says $5 standing area. All right, so they started $5. But I mean, if you use promo code Phantom at SeatGeek, you're going to get discounted seats that you could sit down in and get $20 off your tickets when you use promo code Phantom. That's the deal. So I mean, you're obviously not going to get $20 off $5 tickets, but you don't want those tickets anyways because they're standing room. So Stacy, good point. $5 standing room area tickets. I think I looked, some seats were upstairs for $20, $25, $35 for the preseason game. So use promo code Phantom, you're going to get $20 off your first order. Brian Walker says, how is the secondary looking? Well, Brian, this has been a major talking point throughout so far. And by the way, hit the share button if you're watching this. And I would appreciate everybody doing that, especially if I answer your questions. Also, something else that has been kind of cool that we've been doing is tag friends of yours that are Cowboys fans. If you have Cowboys fans, friends that would like this show and would like their questions answered, would like the engaging talk, make sure to tag them in this so we can continue to grow our audience here, because that's what we're doing. We've got G. Garcia and Eric Koscielny and Chris Bennett, my dad, people that are here almost every day joining the conversation. Robert Holm, my buddy Curtis Starks, Joe Tranchina. These are the everyday guys. So I want to Keith Batchelor's here a lot. I recognize him. So, just add your friends, tag them. If you like it, then they probably like it too. So, the more the merrier here, and the more questions that can get answered, and, the more this thing will grow. Joey Perez says, I got tickets to see them on December 23rd, and it's my first game ever. Fantastic. And that's that's going to be, what game is, December 23rd. What game is that? That'll be fun. Go get tickets to see the December 23rd game like Joey Perez, and use promo code Phantom and get $20 off your tickets. But yeah, I mean, one of the talking points that we've seen throughout camp so far is, and I saw it when I was at camp for a week, their secondary looks really, really good. It did not look good in their first preseason game. So it was sort of weird because, I left camp thinking Cheeto was the best player I saw at camp, and yet, their secondary has, not been great throughout the course of, the first preseason game. All right, I'm just going to check around on all these pages, make sure I'm mentioning and getting to everybody's comments. Law Nation page, Robert Holm in the house. What up, Robert Holm? How are you? The fastest wide receiver on the team, Richard Elizondo. Robert Holm says Tavon Austin. It's interesting. Deontay Thompson's extraordinarily fast. They have a lot of fast guys along the receiving core. That's how they built this thing out, with a lot of speed along the receiving core. All right, let's see. Something else that I wanted to get to, and so this kind of speaks to the Cowboys' personnel decision making, all that kind of stuff. But so if you watch Noon O'Clock with TJ Carpenter, which comes on every day right after this show, it's actually 1 o'clock Central, but Noon O'Clock Mountain Time, which is where TJ Carpenter is out of the Mountain Time zone. They've been talking a lot about Paxton Lynch and how horrible he is. Sometimes the moves you don't make end up becoming the best moves, because it's well documented. The Cowboys were very, very, very interested in Paxton Lynch. In fact, they had a trade in line to get back into the second round to draft Paxton Lynch. Is that where he ended up going? Beginning of the second round? Is that what it was? So, like, the Cowboys wanted Paxton Lynch. They had a trade on the table to get back into the second round to draft Paxton Lynch before the Broncos and John Elway jumped up and gave a better offer. I think it was to the Browns, but I'm not sure. But ended up, jumping back up there and drafting Paxton Lynch. And so because of that, the Cowboys ended up drafting Dak Prescott in the fourth round. And I know a lot of people are down on Dak Prescott, but my goodness, Dak Prescott is basically Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers put together compared with Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch is basically me when it comes to playing quarterback versus Dak Prescott, who in this comparison, again, is Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers rolled into one. And, what's funny is in the early 2000s when the Cowboys were just horrible, especially from a, personnel decision-making standpoint, and you can probably attribute most of that to Jerry basically being on his own making all these decisions. But they just were so atrocious when it came to the draft. There's the famous draft in the early 2000s, and I can't remember what year exactly it was, but they had like 12 picks, and basically none of those picks panned out. And like most of them are gone within like a few years. I mean, it's incredible how bad they were. And it was, look, I think some of that was because Jerry was not really trusting on other guys to help him make decisions, especially in the post-Bill Parcells, vein of the Cowboys. And obviously that's changed a lot, in the last 10 years. But my dad says he thought I was a good quarterback. That's not true. Not enough arm strength at all. But they I guess, like, they certainly didn't get much luck or help in the early 2000s. Like they've seemingly had some luck, find them in this last decade when it comes to the draft. The Paxton Lynch thing, man, what a fantastic move they didn't make. And then of course Johnny Football, which who knows how close they were to actually drafting him, but it's well documented that Jerry really wanted Johnny Football. The Cowboys obviously instead drafted a guy named Zach Barton, who has been, all-world everything. So, again, sometimes the best moves are the moves you don't make, and especially when you look at Will McClay, the director of, player personnel, pro player personnel, who's been, a wizard for the Cowboys in the draft, helping them in the draft, and then also, not just that, but, you look at guys they've sort of unearthed. The famous one for me is Ernie Sims, a guy that was on the couch when they had major issues with their linebacking core, and they brought in Ernie Sims, who, look, he wasn't he wasn't a great, all-pro kind of player, but he was a more than adequate player. And he, again, the biggest thing for me on Ernie Sims was just a guy they found on the street that came in and became a meaningful contributor on this team. And that's like that, beyond Will McClay's ability to draft well, for me, the second biggest thing in that is, how well he's done in finding guys that are low value, finding guys the bargain bin that have become major contributors for this team. And, you look at this team now, I'm going to get to so far my top 5 players in camp. I'll get to that in a second. Top 5 players we've seen so far. But, Antoine Woods, another one of those guys, practice squad guy for Tennessee, got him on the bargain bin, who's, now stepped in as a starting one technique for them. Joe Thomas, another guy that's, a veteran, been around, been on multiple teams. They found in the bargain bin that's been one of their best players at camp so far. So, the Cowboys have done, especially with Will McClay, a fantastic job, not only in the draft, but then also shopping in the bargain bin, which is probably a major reason why, they haven't overextended themselves in free agency in any capacity whatsoever. So that was one of the pieces I want to get to today, which is sometimes the best moves you make aren't, the ones you don't make. And Paxton Lynch, man, the Cowboys were so close to drafting Paxton Lynch, and didn't, thankfully, and they let that fall to John Elway. And I think the thing with Paxton Lynch is it's between the years. Like that's the issue with Paxton Lynch is, he has the size, he has the arm strength, like he had the measurables. Those were off the charts coming out of Memphis. But I just think he's mentally weak, and that's like you just see. The way he's playing, like this is a guy that was a competent quarterback in Memphis. For him to just not be able to complete routine passes, like to me, that's all between the ears. All right, let's see here on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page. Shout out to all you folks watching over there. Curtis Stark says play calling regular season will be the key. Can't let people just sit on our plays and be predictable. Yeah, and again, as I've sort of continued to labor on throughout, being at training camp. And throughout the course, of this preseason period, is they've looked really, really good As far as being multiple, having 4 receiver sets, having dual slot guys, having Cole Beasley line up on the outside. So I mean, they've been less predictable, more creative, and that's we'll have to see if that bears itself out throughout the course of the regular season. Zeke Elliott lining up outside. Again, we'll have to see if that bears itself out throughout the course of the regular season. But it's at least been really, really optimistic. I've been optimistic so far from what I've seen. Eric Kashani wants to know on the Phantom page, which game are we retiring Witt in Jersey? Anyone know? That's a good question. I do not remember. G. Garcia says, who do you think gets the duty to guard Odell when he plays the Giants and why? And then Eric Kashani says, that's a good question. I don't know who's good enough for that assignment. Thomas, if we have him by then. Earl Thomas. Well, no, I mean, Earl's a free safety. I don't know that you're going to give him the assignment on a one-on-one matchup on an island. I mean, I think it's Cheeto. Cheeto's been their number one corner at camp. He's been, I think he had issues in the preseason game, and he hasn't, he had the injury the second week of camp, third week of camp, that I think it's taken a little bit to come back from him. Maybe that's what's hampered him. But so far, Cheeto's their number one corner, and we'll see if they have enough confidence when this regular season starts to leave Cheeto on an island with a guy like Odell Beckham. And I mean, there's a lot of those guys on the Cowboys schedule. I mean, they're going to play the Texans in the regular season, who have DeAndre Hopkins, who's one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. Just trying to think off the top of my head who some of the other. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, they're going to play the NFC South, so Julio Jones will be a tough assignment. Michael Thomas and the Saints will be a tough assignment. So Evans in Tampa. So yeah, they're going to have a lot of guys, from a receiver standpoint, they're going to match up against that. It's going to be some tough tests for Cheeto, and we'll see if he is a true, legitimate number one. By the way, hit the share button if you wouldn't mind. I'm Ari Temkin from 105.3 The Fan. We're streaming live on Phantom, the new world order of sports media. Make sure to check out facebook.com/watch Phantom to get great insight from myself and the Cowboys, from the show before me, The Flyover with Josh Briscoe and the Chiefs, and then noon o'clock with TJ Carpenter on the Broncos. Great insight into those teams and the guys that cover them. Jerry Del Angel says D-Law looks great. You think he'll be a force this season? Yeah, absolutely. I think there are major question marks about him after last season, because though he had 14.5 sacks and was an absolute beast, that was the one that 1 year seemed like an anomaly. And even though when he was drafted, he looked like there was a ton of potential there, I still think it's like, well, let's just wait and see. And I mean, the bottom line is he's come to camp. He's looked every bit the star that he was last year. He's got the leadership down now. So yeah, I mean, I expect him to pick up right where he left off last year. It doesn't mean he's going to pencil him in for 14.5 sacks. He's going to get a lot more double teams this year. It's just going to open up a lot more production for other guys. And by the way, I'm going to get to he and some of these other guys I've been watching in a moment here. I'm going to do my top 5 players I've seen so far in camp for the Dallas Cowboys. So stay tuned for that and see if DeMarcus Lawrence has made my list. Dan Dahlgren, how are you, buddy? Says, are we going to get away from the 12-man sets and maybe use Rico as a downfield threat? He has proved he can break away and he has the hands. Nobody asks Gronk to block, and he's the best tight end in the league. I wouldn't yet necessarily put Rico in Gronk's category yet. Look, I talk about Rico Gathers every day. I don't think he's going to make this team. He's got a great ability to be a pass catcher. I think there's more to it than blocking. At least that's my perception of it. Because if it wasn't that way, then why prioritize blocking over pass catching? Like, I get the need to have, because you basically have Swaim and Jarwin, who are not great pass catchers but good blockers. So why is that a priority relative to a guy that can get down the field, has great size, great hands, is capable of making big plays? I think it's more than that. I think it's understanding schematics offensively. It's the route tree stuff. I think there's a lack of offensive knowledge and development there, and that's a major reason why as well. Again, he's a very puzzling guy, Rico Gathers. He's a fan favorite. He makes big plays. He gets a lot of opportunities, and we've seen throughout the course of the preseasons, especially last year. But for whatever reason, the Cowboys don't like him. He's buried on that depth chart, and they're not going to keep 4 tight ends. Somebody yesterday suggested, well, why not move him to receiver? Well, again, I think it's not just about blocking. I mean, I think it's, that's too simplistic. There's more to it than that as well. Brian Walker says, how's the backup offensive line looking? Hopefully better than last year. As a whole, I think pretty good. There's a lot of depth along the O-line. The big thing is the addition of Cam Fleming, who I've talked about. who's looked good at camp. And again, he just has to be better than Chaz Green was last year, which isn't difficult. Keith Batchelor, is Tyron Smith fully healthy now? Is the back still a problem? I mean, Keith, he's only getting older and he's got a bad back. So I mean, you answer that question, right? Like, fully healthy? No, I don't think. I think the days of seeing a fully healthy Tyron Smith are behind him. Pardon the pun. But I also think, so he did the yoga thing this offseason. Multiple teammates of his have commented so far throughout camp at how good he looks. I'm just of the belief that the older you get, when you have a bad back, your back's going to stay bad. It's not going to get better. But I also think, even if we forget that he's not going to be fully healthy at any point this year, we also have to know that maybe he can overcome the key is, can he play 16 games? He's not going to be healthy, but can he play 16 games? That's the key for them. And when Tyron Smith and Zeke Elliott are in the lineup, the Cowboys have a top 5 offense so long as Dak Prescott's their quarterback. That's Tyron Smith, Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott. Those three things have meant over the course of the last year and a half that they're a top 5 offense. So, that obviously that's a humongous piece for them. Those three mean so much for their ability to be successful on offense. Eric Koscielny says, you think we get another guard after the 4th preseason game off waivers? I mean, it'll be interesting to see when we get there where they are from a health standpoint. Certainly you can never have too many guards. But they've also, you look at their backup situation, they need guys like a Chaz Green, and I know people, you want to drive off a cliff when I say that name, but the truth is they need guys that can play both the interior, and the outside on their offensive line. And that's a guy like Chaz Green that can play both inside and outside. So, it's good to have guys that are specific to a position, but I think the Cowboys have shown they really like to have the flexibility, positional flexibility. James Groover in the house. James, how are you? James Groover wants to know what I think about Orlando Scandrick being released from Washington, LOL. I think he follows a pattern of former Cowboys defensive players going to the Washington Redskins and then being released shortly thereafter. Jason Hatcher, Terrell McClain, and now Orlando Scandrick. Obviously, McClain and Hatcher at least lasted at least a season. Scandrick barely lasted one preseason game. Look, he's outspoken. He if you have a lot of voices and leaders in that locker room, then it can be difficult to have a guy like him. He's perpetually playing with a chip on his shoulder. He's perpetually carrying himself with a chip on his shoulder. I got into a fight with him last year during training camp because I called him a nickel corner, and he flew off the deep end because he didn't think I had any idea of concepts and strategy and schematics, and so he just didn't he took exception with my usage of the term nickel corner. I meant it as a positive, you're really smart. You can play multiple positions. You can play inside. You can play outside. You're a Swiss Army knife, and he just took exception to it. And I get it. I certainly don't know as much about football as he does, so he wins. But I also meant it as you're a guy that can play everywhere, and you're really smart and savvy in that regard. And my question was basically will this change, for you? And he was like, well, what change? I don't know, Orlando. Just answer the damn question, man. But that's just Orlando Scandrick. That's just his personality. He constantly has a chip on his shoulder. Not literally like Anthony Brown, but figuratively like Orlando Scandrick. And, I think he'll find work. He's still okay. He's not great. He's not what he has been. But he's still a pretty productive player in the NFL. James Groover says, love your show. I appreciate that, James. I don't know that I've seen you in the comments, so thank you for commenting, man. Eric Koscielny says, yeah, Marcus Martin has to have surgery now, right? But I think the Cowboys are in bad position if they're going to lose multiple offensive linemen, right? That's my assumptions of this team and their success this year is predicated on their offensive line, their starting offensive line being healthy. Let's see here. What else we got going on? Brian Walker says, love seeing Jalen Smith fly around. All right, well then let me get into, and by the way, I apologize for doing this, but I'm just going to do this anyways. Top five Cowboys players in camp. All right. Wow, look at that. Voila, I'm editing on the fly. All right, so I forgot to do this before the show, so my apologies. So who are the – oh, you could see that while I was doing it? Oh, no, I didn't realize that. Who are the top 5 Cowboys players that you've seen in camp? Post them in the comments, hit the share button, do all that great stuff. Please feel free to do so. By the way, hit the share button and and tag some friends of yours. Let me just maneuver around to the different pages real quickly just so I can make sure to check all the comments. And also, as I've been told to do, make sure to go to facebook.com/watchphantom, Phantom, right there, and comment there, because I've got to go around all these different pages and try to navigate and figure out the comments there. It's just easier if it's in one place. Now, if you're going to comment wherever you are, that's fine, but also check out Watch Phantom in order to do that. Let's see here, the Silver and Blue Nation page. And a shout out to our partners, Silver and Blue Nation, Producer G, Big Game James, doing great work over there. The Dallas Cowboys Report, make sure to follow that page. Dallas Cowboys America's Team, and Law Nation, some of our partners here at Phantom, the New World Order of Sports Media. Let's see here, Ted Mitchell. Rico's made great progress. Green cannot play outside. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see here. Robert Holmes says, hi, Ari. Tavon Austin. Is that a top 5 player that you've seen in camp so far? Yeah, I mean, look, Ted, I think Rico, like, what I've seen from him from a production standpoint, and especially when you know of the importance of, having legitimate pass catchers in the red zone, which, again, I talked about the Eagles yesterday, and I took the over when I told you to take the over on the Eagles, 10.5 wins at BetDSI. Which you can see on the screen right there, betdsi.com. It's only a game until you bet. So go to betdsi.com, use promo code PHANTOM. By the way, they're going to match 100% of your initial deposit. So I went in there to betdsi.com, I used promo code PHANTOM, and I got $100. I made a $100 deposit, and I get $100 in there from BetDSI using promo code PHANTOM. So I got $200 to play with now. I took the over 10.5 wins on the Eagles, and a lot of that's because of their play calling, especially in the red zone. They were a great red zone team last year because of their great tight ends. And that's, to me, that's such an important dynamic. And you look at the best red zone teams, they all have really good pass-catching tight ends because of the mismatch that they provide in such a confined space. So, if you need a guy that can just outsize people, that's what the tight end is for. And that's, the Cowboys have gone with this, putting more stock into blockers at the, as their top 2 tight ends and not Rico Gathers. And again, maybe Rico, the problem is he doesn't understand the route tree. He doesn't understand basic offensive philosophies and principles. I'm not suggesting that that's what it is. I'm suggesting that that's what it is from the Cowboys' perspective, which is the reason he's buried on the depth chart. Keegan Colton says, I'll be glad when Jerry dies. That's not a very nice thing to say. It's not really nice to wish anybody's death on anybody. And by the way, Keegan, I'll remind you that Jerry is not really the decision maker anymore for the Cowboys. It's a collective. Will McClay, Stephen Jones, Jerry, Jason Garrett, they're all in on the decision-making process for the Dallas Cowboys. By the way, a little preview. When I talk, yesterday I did the Eagles. The day before I did the Giants. Today I do the Skins. And just a tease, so far I have the Eagles winning the NFC East, the Cowboys second, and both making the playoffs. The Giants at over 7 wins, but not making the playoffs at 3rd place, and then the Redskins 4th. So I'll give you my idea on their over-under here in a moment. But first, I'm asking you, your top 5 players that you've seen so far, whether it be through what you've read in camp, what you've heard from me, what you watched in the preseason game. Give me your top 5 players. I'll give you mine in a moment here. Ozzy Santos says, who do you think will be the biggest surprise player who does not make the team? Rico Gathers, Coney Ely, 2 guys that probably won't make this team. Charles Tapper, maybe. Chris Bennett says Colt McCoy. He's still in the Redskins, isn't he? Redskins have a lot of guys from UT on their team, don't they? Or is it just Colt McCoy? And they have Samaje Perine from Oklahoma. All right, top 5 players so far at camp. For me, I'm going to go first honorable mention. Give you my honorable mention first, because 5's not that many. Cheeto. Mentioned he was the best player I saw at camp. He suffered an injury, which is a little bit of a setback. So, it remains to be seen. He was the best player I saw at camp, but I was there for a week. After I left camp, he suffered an injury. He didn't play great in the preseason game. That's why he's honorable mention. Dak Prescott's honorable mention for me. Didn't look good in the first week of camp I was there. Has pretty much looked really, really good throughout the rest of camp, and then looked good with his 158 passer rating in the preseason game, in which he completed 3 of 3 passes. The only reason why he's honorable mention and not higher is because we just saw 3 passes from him in the preseason. Antoine Woods makes my honorable mention. He was one of those guys I thought would be in my top 5. And some of this is based upon expectations. This is a guy that had no expectations. Nobody knew who he was before camp started. He was on the Titans practice squad last year out of USC and has made a big impression in camp. Got into a fight with Travis Frederick, started to get first team reps, was disruptive at that one technique in their initial preseason game. I thought their first preseason game, the defense looked really, really good, especially their front seven basically, their defensive line and linebackers. So I thought Woods was disruptive. They were batting down balls, line of scrimmage in their first preseason game. They were active. So Antoine Woods for me is an honorable mention. Zach Martin also makes honorable mention. Part of this is because it was just hard for me to fill out my top five, and he and then Tank Lawrence, who's also my honorable mention, were basically two guys that I wanted to put in my top five but didn't, and so I just put them in honorable mention. But they're as good as you expect them to be. So while Antoine Woods has far exceeded expectations, it doesn't mean that Antoine Woods is a better player than Zach Martin or Tank Lawrence or anybody. It just means that, like, based upon expectations, we think Zach Martin's great, and he's looked great. Eric Koscielny says Chris Richard for MVP of camp. Yeah, no question. Chris Richard has been the talk of the town at camp, and we're going to have to see a major improvement, I would think, from his unit, the corners, in preseason game number 2, because they were disappointed. Let's see here. They were disappointing, I would say, relative to what we've seen so far in camp. So I got my honorable mention. Cheeto, Dak Prescott, Antoine Woods, Zach Martin, Tank Lawrence. Honorable mention. All right, my top 5. Here is number 5, Joe Thomas. Again, not saying Joe Thomas is a better player than Zach Martin. That's ridiculous. A lot of this is based upon expectations. There were very few expectations of Joe Thomas, and he's come in and been really, really good at camp. I mean, he looked good at camp. He was on the 105 through the Fan, Dallas Cowboys Radio Network post-game show. He was the player of the game with his 5 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, interception in the initial preseason game. He's active. He's got great pursuit of the ball. He can play at the point of attack, and he can play in coverage. He has been a really good player throughout the entirety of camp, and a lot of this is based upon the limited expectations that people had for him at the start of camp. So Joe Thomas, for my top 5 Cowboys in camp so far, is number 5. Number 4, Dorrance Armstrong. This guy is an absolute monster in the making, and already looks like an absolute steal when it comes to the Cowboys as a 4th-round draft pick. Armstrong has it all. He's got speed. He's got great bend. He's got really polished moves. He has worked Cam Fleming at camp multiple times. Absolutely worked him. Again, Dorrance Armstrong was the best rookie I saw in my week at training camp in Oxnard, California. So, Dorrance Armstrong looks legit, and especially, so you have D-Law over here who you know is going to be good. He's going to command double teams because of his 14.5 sack campaign last year. And then on the other side, you're going to have a pretty good rotation with Dorrance Armstrong and Randy Gregory and David Irving, and if he ever comes back. And Dorrance Armstrong for me has been the 4th best player at camp. Jalen Smith is 3rd on my list, and he could be higher than this. You cannot rave enough about Jalen Smith. I talked about him yesterday. The way he's moving, I know it's just practice and preseason, but the way he's moving, it far exceeds the expectations that certainly I had for him this year. My first 3 guys are guys that are far exceeding expectations, and you could argue Jalen Smith's been the best player throughout all of camp so far for the Cowboys. He's a great leader. He brings a great attitude and a swagger to that defense. He believes. He's always believed, but maybe more so now because he's got the confidence in his play. I hate to continue to bring up Jerry Jones's comments on Jalen Smith or Randy Gregory because, he's always positive about those guys and has been even when there shouldn't have been reason for him to be positive. But, they're starting to believe and talk like this is the guy that they drafted out of Notre Dame, which, again, I'm not willing to take that far of a jump, but he's been impressive, especially the way that he's been moving. Eric Koscielny wants to know if anybody knows where to watch the Cowboys-Bengals game. It's not tomorrow, Eric. It's Saturday, by the way. The Cowboys-Bengals game is Saturday night, 6 o'clock. The pregame show on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network starts at 3. Eric, where do you live? Because if you don't live locally, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the game. So if you don't live in Texas, it's going to be very difficult for you to find the game, Eric. But somebody help out Eric if they know where he can watch the game. I know locally you can watch it, but I guess that means you're not local. So my apologies for that. All right, so there's my 5, 4, and 3 on my top 5 players I've seen at camp so far. That would be Joe Thomas at 5, Dorrance Armstrong at 4, Jalen Smith at 3. And a lot of that is, again, based upon just expectations. Whereas with those guys, there were limited, if any, expectations at all for those guys. Number 2, Zeke Elliott, which shouldn't be much of a surprise. Zeke Elliott is fantastic. He's great. I mean, and he's looked every bit as good throughout the course of training camp as you'd expect. The thing that I love, though, is the way that they're starting to use him, which is not just out of the backfield. They're lining him up in the slot. They're lining him up on the outside. He's running traditional wide receiver routes. They're also going to use him more in the passing game, which is something that I've been talking about this whole offseason, is they need to continue to utilize him more in the passing game, even if it removes and takes away some of the production that he's going to give you in the running game. I think that's perfectly fine. So, Zeke Elliott is an absolute beast. I think people are forgetting about him. I think he's kind of underrated relative to how good he is. I think he's the best running back in the NFL. All right, checking back on the America's team page. Let's see here. Curtis Starks give me his top 5. Jalen Smith, Zeke Elliott, Byron Jones, Michael Gallup, Connor Williams is his top 5. In what order, Curtis? Is Jalen Smith 1, Zeke Elliott 2, Byron Jones 3, Michael Gallup 4, Connor Williams 5? Is that how it is? All right, I like that list. Gallup's a guy that I could have had on this list that I didn't. Byron Jones, another guy I could have had on this list that I didn't. Nick Franklin says Rico's the best tight end. Yeah, we've been through this, at least from a pass-catching standpoint, but either the Cowboys just, have given up on him, or there's something we're not seeing, but there's a lot of things going on there. Eric Koscielny says Zeke is a demigod or something, maybe metahuman. Yeah, I'd say metahuman, probably, more so. Missouri. Eric, you're in Missouri. Where are you in Missouri, man? I used to live in Missouri. I used to live in Moberly, Missouri. My first radio gig was in Moberly, Missouri, which is 30 miles north of Columbia. And I hope you're not a Mizzou fan, Eric, because Dorrance Armstrong is from the University of Kansas, my alma mater. And he's going to beat out Coney Ely, a Mizzou guy, Coney Ealy's not going to make the team because he went to Mizzou, and Dorrance Armstrong's a beast because he went to Kansas. Enough said. Keith Price says, Ari, love the show. Do you think the secondary is good to go? And I want to get to my number 1 player I've seen at camp, which I will in a second here. It's funny, though, because you'll notice I don't really have anybody on the secondary on my list of top 5 players I've seen at camp. Cheeto made my Joplin, Missouri. Nice. Cheeto made my honorable mention, but that was just because the week I was at camp, he was the best player I saw. Now, he hasn't had, I think, he suffered the injury basically a few days after I left camp, and I don't know that he's been the same. But, the corners didn't play well in their first preseason game, so that's kind of what I'm going off of. I mean, the corners played really, really well at camp. They were the best positional group I saw at camp when I was there, and then you watch the first preseason game, and the linebackers and the defensive line were the best positional groups on the Cowboys defense. So it's bizarre to me. And you could argue the linebacking core is probably the best positional group on the Cowboys. I mean, I've got Jalen Smith and Joe Thomas, 2 guys on the linebacking core in my top 5. Players that I've, and that's not even mentioning Sean Lee. So, I think we need to see some better play from the corners in the second preseason game against Cincinnati, and their safeties are a mess. The Cowboys have a major issue at safety, and they're not addressing it. And maybe that leads me to my Earl Thomas update, which I'll make here in a little bit. But if you're watching this, Keith says he likes the show. Hit the share button. Ben Wolf gives me the heart eyes emoji. Thank you, Ben. Heart eyes to you, buddy. Dan Dahlgren says his top 5 is Jalen Smith 1, Chidobe 2. By the way, thanks for he wrote Chidobe A as if you mean not Chidobe Johnson, the other Chidobe they have on the team? It's just funny they wrote Chidobe A. I'm not making fun of you, Josh, Dan. I just think it's funny. Byron Jones, you just could write Cheeto and I would have known who it was. But he wrote Chidobe A as if, don't forget about the other Chidobe they have. Byron Jones is 3, Gallup is 4, Connor Williams is 5. He said excluded the obvious Zeke, big 3-0 lineman, and Dak. You can't exclude the big 3. That's cheating. I mean, if I take out the big 3, I give you my top 5, it's a completely different top 5. I mean, I have Frederick and Zeke as my Travis Frederick's my best player I've seen at camp so far. So, you got to include those guys. Come on. Herbert Jordan gives me the laughing emoji. Dusty Brandon says, sup, Ari, great coverage. Appreciate you saying that, brother. Hit the share button if you wouldn't mind. Also, tag friends of yours that might be fans of the Dallas Cowboys. And that will invite them to this show, and that would be fantastic. You can also hit If you're watching this on mobile, like I am, watching the comments roll by, you can hit the share button in the bottom screen and then write post, or also then you can also invite friends and then tell your friends, hey, buddy, come watch this, which is just another good way for you to help me grow the audience. If you think I've got great coverage, I do a good show, I appreciate you saying that. Hit the share button. And Dusty Brandon says, is Lance Lenore doing enough to earn the last wide receiver spot? Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think the answer to that question is yes. Will he is a different story, and this is well documented. They're probably going to keep 6 receivers, but 5 of those are already known. Cole Beasley, Alan Hearns, Michael Gallup, Terrence Williams, and Tavon Austin. So you're basically then you've got 3 guys for 1 spot, which is Lance Lenore, Deontay Thompson, and Noah Brown. Noah Brown's probably gone because he's been injured all of camp. Deontay Thompson's a guy they signed as a free agent this offseason and has looked good. But nobody out of those 3 has looked better than Lance Lenore. And you can argue Lance Lenore's been one of the 3 or 4 best receivers so far in camp. So, I mean, Dusty, the answer to your question is, yeah, he's done enough. But will he? Will it be enough? And will they go with Deontay Thompson or will they go with Lance Lenore? Because Lance Lenore's a guy, another, as we talk about Will McClay and the magic that he's done in finding these guys, like Lance Lenore is another one of those Will McClay guys. All right, let's see here. Kathy Rouse says hello. Hi, Kathy. How are you? G. Garcia says, seen Cheeto put a hit on Zeke. Wonder if he got in trouble. Really? I didn't see that. Probably, though. Lay off him. Curtis Stark says Sean Lee stays healthy, and then we'll have the best front 7 in the NFL. Yeah, that could very well be the case this year. I mean, there is no question that they have a exceptional front 7, at least from what we've seen at camp. And I think, you rate positional groups on the Cowboys. For me, linebacker is number 1, which is crazy, considering it's been a major weakness for them in recent history. Probably have to throw running backs out there at 2, maybe defense or O-line at 3. I'm going to go linebackers, O-line, defensive linebackers, O-line, running backs, defensive line as my, 4 best. I give you the weird 4. Like, what a weird way to do 4 fingers. How about just that? I could have just done that. Erica Shaney says, I'm from Austin, Texas originally. Oh, nice. I used to live in Austin. Chris Bennett lives in Austin. Dusty Brandon says, do you think our defense can be top 5 with everyone healthy and when Irving comes back? I worry about the secondary, especially the safety position. But I mean, I think the Cowboys' offense is built to be top 5. They're built to win on offense. And you look at Super Bowl champs, you don't have to be top 5 offense in offense and top 5 defense. That's just the truth. So, I think the answer to your question is they've got a really talented front 7. Their linebacking core is stout and really good. There are a lot of question marks along that secondary. But they don't have to be top 5 offense. They're going to be top 5. They don't have to be top 5 defense. They're going to be top 5 offense. They just need to have a quality pass rush and be able to get off the field on 3rd down. Those are the 2 metrics that are most. Again, what's with the weird number 2? They have to be able to get off the field on 3rd down, and they have to be able to get after the quarterback, which I think, based upon their linebacking core and based upon their front 7, they're going to be able to do. Leroy Parsons says, what's up with Randy Gregory? Randy Gregory looks great. He's had a good camp from what we've seen. I think Randy Gregory is going to be a major, major plus for this team. Every day. Hey, Reed. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's go, Adam! Let's go, Adam! Yeah, Jamal! Yeah, Adam! Let me go! Let him go! Let him go, man! Where's my phone at, man? Hey. Yeah, Jamal! Oh, my God. I'm glad we came. I know you will. Who will be our starting safety this year? Great question. Jeff Heath and Xavier Woods, or Jeff Heath and Earl Thomas. We shall see. But I know a lot of Cowboy fans want just not Jeff Heath out there. So, anyways, every day this week, I've been breaking down a different team, giving you the over-under. So far, I've gone with 2 teams that I've taken the over on, the Giants and Eagles. If you are looking to, perhaps make some money football season, go to betdsi.com, use promo code Phantom when you sign up, and take the over-under on the Redskins. Take the under at 6.5. I'm about to tell you why. But I took the over at 7 on the Giants. I took the over at 10.5 on the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win this division. They'll win 11, 12, 13 games. I'm taking the under on the Washington Redskins at 6.5. And the reason I'm taking the under on them is, well, first of all, I think this could be a lot different if Darius Geist didn't tear his ACL, but they're going to have major, major issues with their running back situation again. So that's like line one for why I'm taking the under on the Redskins. They thought they fixed their running back situation, which was horrible last year with Samaje Perine, Chris Thompson, and Rob Kelly. Now that's where they are. That's what the running back situation looks like. It's Samaje Perine, Chris Thompson, and Rob Kelly. So it's back to what it was last year, which is not great. And with Geist, it's a different story, but he tore his ACL. The best players and most known players on their team are all over 30 now. Trent Williams, Josh Norman, Ryan Kerrigan, all over 30. Not a good sign. They were 32nd in the NFL against the run last year. Now, they knew that, and so they spent pretty heavy on a stout front pairing. They went after the Alabama guys to be stout up front. They drafted Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne with their first couple of picks. I thought it was a stretch, to be honest with you, for both of those guys. Not to say they weren't talented players, but they basically took need over best player available, which I'm never a fan of. So they were 32nd in run defense last year, and have they done enough to improve that? I mean, are they going to be middle of the pack? How good can they be if they're adequate at run defense this year? Especially because they didn't have to go up against Saquon Barkley last year. I think Zeke missed one of the Redskins games last year. Plus when you look at the AFC South, the NFC South, some good running teams. Atlanta is a really good running team. Saints are a really good running team. So that's a struggle for me to think that they're going to be okay. Now, Ryan Kerrigan's still a beast, but again, he's over 30. And I also think, like, Gruden had some weird personnel groupings last year that made them a really bad third down offense, which is getting really into the minutia. But I just don't have any confidence in their head coach to put the right pairings out there. They have they're counting a lot of guys that are injury prone. They are very unproven along their wide receiving core. I mean, Jamison Crowder is their best receiver, but I mean they have Josh Dotson, who's coming on a big year for him as the former TCU wide receiver, who's a first-round draft pick who has not looked good at all. And then their big free agent acquisition was Paul Richardson, Paul Richardson. And then, of course, they have Alex Smith, and they had Kirk Cousins last year, which you could argue Alex Smith's a better player, but he's older. He's not going to throw for as many yards. He's not going to take as many chances down the field, especially. Look, last year he was a legitimate down-the-field threat guy with Kansas City, but, I mean, he doesn't have the weapons in Washington that he had in Kansas City. So I just think it's a mess. This will be Jay Gruden's last year as the head coach of the Redskins. I think Dan Snyder, pictured here, has probably given him more time than he's given most coaches in recent history with the Washington Redskins. My lock in the NFC East is bet the under on the Redskins at 6.5. Go to betdsi.com, use promo code Phantom, go to NFL Futures Bets, and bet the under on 6.5 for the Washington Redskins. I know some books have them at 7. Last I checked at betdsi.com, they have them at 6.5. So take the under at betdsi.com. Again, use promo code Phantom, Phantom, and take the under on the Washington Redskins. 32nd rush defense, two of the best rush offenses in their division in the NFL. They are not going to have as effective as a running game as they would have if Darius Geist were healthy. Just a lot of reasons why I am not very optimistic that the Skins can hit the over on the over-under 6.5. So to recap, as I go around the division, the other teams of the division, I have the Giants finishing third at over 7 wins, meaning I think this division is going to be pretty good. I have the Cowboys finishing second, which I will do the over-under on them tomorrow, but their over-under is 8.5, so maybe a pretty good indicator if I have the Giants finishing third at over 7, where I think the Cowboys will be at the over-under at 8.5. I have the Eagles over 10.5 wins, which might sound crazy, but again, I think everything that Jay Gruden and the Redskins don't do, use the right personnel groupings, play calling, matching that sort of stuff, understanding, advanced analytics and how to implement those kinds of things in order to make the right calls. I think that's all there from the Eagles, which is why I'm taking the over on them. And then, of course, the Redskins, I think, finished last at under 6.5 wins. So go to betdsi.com, use promo code PHANTOM, F-A-N-T-O-M, where they will match 100% of your initial deposit. So I put $100 in at betdsi.com using promo code PHANTOM and have another $100 to play with. So I took the over 10.5 for the Eagles, took the over 7 for the Giants. I'm taking the under on the Redskins. I will take a look at the Cowboys over-under tomorrow. All right, that's it for me today on Showtime. A big thank you to all of our great friends, G. Garcia, Eric Koshaney, Danny Scholl, Chris Bennett, Dan Dahlgren, Dusty Brandon, Eric Delgado, Curtis Starks, Keith Price, Robert Holm, Joe Tranchina. A big thank you to all of our usual suspects for joining the show today, for being a part of the show today. This is your show, so make sure to be a part of it every single day with us right here on Phantom. And, of course, make sure to continue to support all of our great shows. Visit SeatGeek, download the app where you can get $20 off your first purchase when you use promo code PHANTOM at SeatGeek. Again, SeatGeek, download the app or go to SeatGeek.com where you can see these cheap prices already for preseason games. Somebody brought this to my attention, that's standing room only tickets, but starting at $5 for these preseason games, you can get in the door and have a seat for $20, $30, $40. And again, when you go and use promo code PHANTOM, you're going to get $20 off your first order. So go there now, buy your tickets now for the Cowboys this season, especially if you want to get in the door for their first preseason game, which should be fun on Saturday. And if you do stop by, make sure to come say hello to me, as I'll be broadcasting live with the pregame show along the Dallas Cowboys radio network with Jesse Holley outside the stadium in the Miller area.